Welcome to Monuments and Movements. On today's episode, we discuss the 2 police officers that were shot in Los Angeles. How did we get to this point, and where are we headed as a country if this continues? Let's talk about it.
Well, hey, welcome to the Monuments and Movements podcast. I'm Justin. I'm here with my man, Kenny.
Good morning.
How you doing?
Good. It's early. I'm happy to be here.
Dark and early.
Dark and early.
Try this out, see how it goes.
Yeah, let's get into it. We got a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
So a couple weeks ago now, 2 police officers were shot in Los Angeles. Reading from a Newsweek article. Specifically, there were LA County sheriffs, and they're fighting for their lives currently. I don't currently know the state, but when this article was written, they were in very critical condition in the hospital. But I guess that it was pretty much an ambush that went down. These sheriff deputies had only been on the force for about 14 months, the article says, and they were monitoring a train station, and a man came up from behind and just blasted into the car. But one of the main things that get a little bit interesting in this article is it talks about how after the ambush, crowds of protesters were actually waiting outside the hospital, blocking entrances, and they were chanting, some protesters were chanting, "We hope they die." There's a video of the shooting. Sheriff Villanueva has also expressed his frustration over what he said was a growing trend of unprovoked attacks on police amid rising anti-police sentiment. And I think even since this article came out, there's been, at least I know, a couple more of police shootings and attacks on police. The article goes on to describe how people continue to block the way for ambulances, and eventually they had to arrest a few people and get the crowd to die down. So obviously officers shot at point-blank range. Protesters tried to block ambulances. There's a lot going on here. And we've heard, I think up until this point, we've heard of people blocking routes of fire trucks or ambulances getting into Chaz. And I heard they hired a new czar in their town to help come up with some kind of a police force. That's a topic for a different episode. So now we've been led to people kind of strategically picking off police officers, sheriff deputies, kind of thing. So the big question is why or what's really going on here is what we want to dive into. And personally, I think, I guess just to kick this off, with as much awareness as the whole nation is paying attention to systematic racism right now, police brutality and those kind of things that are going on, the NBA, the MLB, the NFL, everybody's all about it right now. You see it on every single commercial and everything in between. So with all of the world's attention kind of focused on this kind of stuff, is this what's going on? Is this how we bridge the gap? I know a lot of people personally who are cops and sheriff deputies, and all black, Asian, Mexican, etc. But how, and we can get into the little aspects and what we think. But how did we get here? Just first of all, what is really going on with people? Now we have people just straight up attacking police officers, and "We hope they die" being chanted as they're struggling for their lives in hospital beds.
Wow. And they're standing outside the hospital chanting those things.
Yes.
Wow. So how did we get here?
Correct.
Well, I mean, I think it's no secret that there's been some tragedies, involving specifically what kind of gets highlighted as black people in the police.
Mm-hmm.
Feels like almost every other week, or maybe every week, we're hearing these stories of unarmed black people getting shot by the police.
Right.
And what happens is when we hear these stories, there's immediately a narrative thrown on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually one of 2 narratives. It's usually summed up by unarmed black man gets shot by police, and or thug gets taken out by the police, people race bait.
Right.
Right? Immediately when you look at these situations, there's usually a line drawn.
Sure.
and it's like, okay, here's a story, pick a side.
Yeah.
And I think our culture, we buy into that.
Mm-hmm.
We buy into that vortex. Let's take the case of Jacob Blake.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that was, I think, probably the most recent one leading up to this police shooting.
Right.
Or the shooting of the police. There was a lot that went on there. Right? I don't think you can necessarily just say, oh, this is an unarmed black man who got shot in the back by the police. But likewise, I don't think you just say, oh yeah, there's a thug resisting arrest and he deserved what he got.
Right.
You know, obviously, I mean, if you read the details and you look into the story, you know, Mr. Blake was doing things he shouldn't have been doing, you know, and he had a history and he had a record, you know. But when you look at these stories, you can't go there.
Yeah.
Well, I don't go there. I'm not saying you can't.
Right.
You know, immediately they try to paint a narrative. Oh, well, you know, this guy had a record. He was a thug. He was a criminal. I'm sure that's probably significant.
Sure.
But, you know, I think we as a nation right now, we've been conditioned to immediately jump on the narrative boat. And kind of in a Hollywood celebrity culture, we're very quick to characterize people.
Correct.
I mean, here's what I see happen. Is this guy, Jacob Blake, you know, is doing something he shouldn't be doing.
Right.
And, you know, the cops get called on him. And, you know, things just start to get out of control. The cops try to arrest him. You know, they have a hard time. Things just start getting chaotic. Now, you know, should the police have shot him 7 times? No, I don't think that should have happened. I think once you kind of get to that point, though, it's kind of chaos.
Right.
You know, once that door's open, you know, he was resisting arrest, but let's look at it like this, right? Because a lot of people will say, well, he was resisting arrest, so he had it coming. It's very common in black culture, black American culture, right, for a black kid to have what's called the talk.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean the birds and bees. You know, when you hear a young black man talk about the talk, right, it's usually with a black male figure in his life.
Right.
Which are basically taught, be very careful around the police because they can kill you.
Sure.
Right. And depending on who gives you the talk, you know, some will be like, yeah, you know, you got to be careful because as a black man, you're a lot more likely to die at the hands of the police. But a lot of times that story is told, no, the police are going to kill you. They're looking for a reason to kill you.
Right.
Now, you know, everyone has a different experience. I'm not saying one's right or wrong factually, right? But you have to understand when that's ingrained in you deep as a young man,
right,
or you automatically grow up with this bias.
Mm-hmm.
And I know bias has a negative connotation, but it's a bias that's put in your mind.
Yeah.
Where you think, man, the police are going to kill me. Is that right? You know, I don't think that's
in a way, it's
bias.
almost kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Right, a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So now you're a black man in the situation. You're starting to see more and more cops trying to take you down.
Right.
A lot of people think, oh, this guy was just a thug trying to resist arrest. Well, if you're surrounded by people who you think are going to kill you,
you're going to resist.
You have fight or flight.
Right.
You know, I think it's an instinctual thing. I don't think it's they ain't going to take me.
Mm.
You know, I think that's what happens in most of these cases, right? Is these guys, they're scared to death that they're going to die. And like you said, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
They resist, right, out of survival tactics to the point where you get tasered, or at least get shot at by tasers, and there's multiple cops trying to arrest you.
Right.
And you're still too scared to submit.
Right.
Right. And I'm not saying that's right. You know, it's a tragedy. It's one tragedy that just gets added onto another, gets added onto another, that ends up with him getting shot 7 times.
Right.
Did he deserve it? I don't know. I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is it completely misunderstandable why the cops did it? I don't think so. Were they like, okay, if this guy resists again, we're going to shoot him 7 times? I don't think that. I think things just got out of control.
Right.
But you see, the problem is we don't know how to look at these things objectively. We're actually, like, conditioned. We're not encouraged to look at them objectively.
Right.
We're not encouraged to look at it from just the humanity. Right? The humanity of it is, you know, this man. Well, I think he lived.
Jacob Blake,
Jacob Blake, yeah. So, I mean, you know, that's a good
Right.
good thing. I don't know if I don't know what his physical state is permanently, but when I look at this as a human being, I look, okay, there's a tragedy. Right? There was a guy doing something he shouldn't have been doing,
Mm-hmm.
and unfortunately things got out of hand.
Sure.
Right. And now this man is going through this trauma. Right. These officers are having to go through this trauma. Right. And there's always a vortex, right, that they try to paint, and you try to get sucked in.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, Black Lives Matter, or, Blue Lives Matter, all police are evil, all the system is racist, and it just becomes this vortex.
Right.
You can't play that game.
Right.
I don't get sucked into that.
Mm-hmm.
You can't add fuel to that fire. It's easy to, and it's in our nature to want to do that. Because I think a lot of people are looking for a cause. But I think you just got to step back and look at it as a human.
Yeah.
And I think we've lost that ability, which is why now you have people retaliating by going out and literally trying to assassinate police in the streets.
Right. Yeah, and I think, there's a lot to that. There's a lot of layers. Even just in the Jacob Blake case alone, there's a lot of layers to it. There's a lot more gray area than I think, like we're talking about. There's a lot more gray area, and I think we've probably mentioned before, everything just comes out so processed already that it's already, your food's already chewed and digested for you in the form of news, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I think, you said it perfectly. There's two extreme sides to the spectrum. There's the one side that is painting the narrative that cops are just going around gunning down unarmed black men, and then there's the other side painting the narrative that cops are trying to do their best job, and that there's these thugs out there and they had it coming to them, kind of like you said. And I think there's a way larger middle ground than wants to be discussed, and at least in the media, because it doesn't, it's all about selling and clicks and everything that we can get into. But I want to go back to what you were talking about. You were talking about the talk, and this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. It was reminding me of a story, an experience I had with the police. And I've probably told you the story before, but one time I was probably 16 or 17. I just got my license. I was definitely not old enough to drive minors in my car, and my truck just had a bench seat, so just 3 seats in it. And we had went. It was me and a couple of guys on the football team. 2 of the dudes were black. 1 guy was Mexican. And so you have about 2 black dudes and 1.5 Mexicans in a 3-seater car. So 4 guys total in my truck that I shouldn't have been driving anyway. We went to go get Wingstop. And as we were at a stoplight, a cop rolls through the intersection the opposite way and immediately locks eyes with us. And we all knew, dang it, we're cooked. So I'm like, let's just hit the freeway. We had these chicken wings in the car. We're like, we just want to get home and eat these wings. So I tried to hit the freeway, and as soon as I saw the lights flash in my rearview mirror, my heart just sank, and I was terrified. But I think I was more terrified of what my parents would do to me. But what ended up transpiring is the cop came up. It was a white guy, and he looked at the car and looked at the fact that there was 3 seat belts and 4 of us in there, 2 black dudes, Mexican guy, a half Mexican guy, whatever. He didn't seem very intimidating at all, but the thing that I had always learned when I was younger, especially talking to a police officer, is, hey, yes sir, no sir, just tell him the truth, just be cooperative, give him whatever he needs, and the cop did his job. He asked us questions. He kind of joked around with us, and in the end, he ended up letting us go with no ticket. He took one of us in the car with him. When we drove to my buddy's house, and he just dropped us off, so we weren't driving illegally. So we got out of it, no ticket. But my point is, I guess I wasn't ever thinking the entire time that my life could be in danger here with this cop. I was more thinking my life could be in danger with my parents.
Yeah.
But and that's very different than the average African American, than how they grow up. And like you're saying, you know, if you grow up in a world thinking that police officers are out to get you and all this stuff, it does kind of create this paranoia and this and add in, you know, sure, add in a couple people in the wrong crowd, wrong place, wrong time, probably, you know, I can imagine, you know, these people possibly facing jail time for having, I don't know, there's a lot to these stories that you know, we don't hear, but at the same time, it's with the Jacob Blake story. You can argue that in the heat of the moment, like you said, it got chaotic, it got crazy. I'm sure it ended up turning to like pretty primal. Two guys probably thought that their lives were in jeopardy. I don't know. But I think one of the notes I wrote down when we were talking about this or reading this article was, how does this bridge the gap, and how can we do a better job of bridging the gap? Because I think that, you know, let's just say that let's just err on this side of that there are more police going around gunning down innocent black men and women. I don't believe that's the case, but let's just say that's the case. Does going out and hunting police officers down help any of that? And like that's the thing that I want to, you know, talk about. And growing up, you know, we both kind of grew up in difficult parts of town where we knew what it was like to wake up in the middle of the night and wonder if we put our bikes away if they were going to get stolen or not.
Yeah.
So
Those
we did
fireworks or bullets.
yeah, the 3-second count between fireworks.
Yeah.
So I mean, we don't necessarily come from easy street, but so I know what it's like to be with friends who get intimidated when a police officer rolls by, or I definitely know what that's like to be, you know, in those crowds. But how do we bridge that gap? Because I think how we got here, I guess to answer that question, is we have this whole defund the police movement, and people trying to convince everybody that police are insignificant, look at all the harm they're doing, and
That they're the enemy.
That they're the enemy. And I think it's created this, like you said, this vortex or this echo chamber of police. We don't need police. We don't need police. And now people are thinking, yeah, we don't need police. Let's take them out to the extremes. And I just don't think that that's where our civilization needs to go.
Yeah.
I know if you poll people, I've seen polls of they've polled people in the actual like ghettos of towns and asked them, do you think we need to defund police? And all of these people almost unanimously have said, no, I think we need more police.
Yeah, I think I mean personally, from my opinion and what I would predict, I predict that if you defund the police in a lot of these more troubled neighborhoods, I think it's going to result in a lot more chaos for those neighborhoods.
Right.
Personally, I understand that's probably not the emotionally popular response. But yeah, so you're asking essentially, what do we do?
Right. Yeah.
Right. Well, first of all, I think, okay, I'll talk about the individual solution, then I think the broader solution. So I'll share a little bit about my experience with the police. When I was younger, my earlier run-ins with the police were pretty bad compared to my more recent ones. I mean, I don't run into them all the time, but I'm saying like the first time I got pulled over, I had a pretty bad experience. It wasn't like, he pulled me out of it wasn't violent or anything, but I was sweating, and I don't know. Things were kind of starting to spin, and I was starting to get worried, and there wasn't a lot of kindness from either me or him.
Right.
But I found kind of the more in my life, the more I go through life, the better the experience gets, because I've realized, through my experience, I've learned to understand truth that actually not all police officers are out to get me.
Right.
Right. From my experience and my worldview, I've found that's not the case. Now, I get that, a lot of people in these other cities might not have that experience. Right? It's different for most places you go. But the thing is, when I stop seeing someone as an enemy, right? What's the saying? Pastor Cesar says, "When I change, everything changes."
Right.
When my perspective changes,
Mm-hmm.
right, and the way I treat people changes, you actually see that my situation changes.
Right.
And it goes both ways. You know, how do we handle this? It's through accountability.
Hmm.
Right, what do I mean by that? So, for example, in L.A., right, these people who are, number one, the guy who shot the police. I mean, if you watch the video, that's crazy. He just
Brutal.
walks right up to the passenger side window.
Right.
Starts firing. And, I mean, doesn't even think about who he's firing at. There's a mom. She was 31. Has a 6-year-old child. Shot off her jaw. I mean, I think they were able to fix it.
Yeah.
Point blank shooting a mother. Right. The other guy, I think, was 24, was a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, the reason the guy did that, right, is because, in his mind, they're the enemy. Right. It's civil war
Right.
at that point.
Right.
And, likewise, the people at the hospital, the people blocking the ambulances, the people
Mhm.
chanting, "We hope they die," they genuinely believe that the police are the enemy.
Right.
Right, but the thing is, right, is the only way you deal with this is accountability.
Right.
Right. Let's take the Black Lives Matter movement. Right. Essentially, what that is that is a movement that demands accountability from
Mhm.
police. And I mean, like it or not, right now the police are being held accountable.
Yeah.
You can argue in the justice system all day. I mean, that's an endless argument. But I mean, just in society and public, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
from public opinion,
Right.
right, from, they are being held accountable in a sense.
Yeah.
But the reason that a lot of these movements lack any real power, right, I'd say, especially like the protests that turn into riots,
Mm-hmm.
these people executing the police, is you can't demand accountability without being held accountable yourself. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Where there's no accountability, there's no credibility.
Yeah.
Right? There's no power. So, for example, these protests that turn into riots, I'm specifically talking about the riots and the violent ones and the ones that turn into looting. You can't claim to hold the police accountable, but not hold yourself responsible for your own actions, because, a lot of these people are saying, well, as long as they keep, killing black people,
Sure.
city's going to burn. Like, well, that's your fault. That's your responsibility. That's not the police's fault.
Right.
That's on you. If you're burning a building,
Correct.
stop blaming the government. No, that's you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're looting stuff, that's on you. Right? If your protest turns into that, that's on you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's kind of the same example, where people say, well, it's only a few bad cops. And a lot of people will say, well, no, it's the whole system.
Yeah.
Well, if you're going to hold people to that standard,
Right.
if you want any sort of authority or power, or you want your words to carry any weight, you have to hold yourself to that standard.
Sure.
So if you're going to demand justice, for a life that's been taken, which you should, right? If you're going to start, burning down cities, or is what's happening in LA, going around shooting police,
Right.
blocking ambulances,
Mm-hmm.
like, your words,
Yeah.
literally have no weight.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to demand accountability, you have to be held accountable as well
Right.
for your actions. In other words, you got to grow up.
Right.
Right, both sides.
And to speak to that, I know you had another point you wanted to make, but to get into the minutia of everything, the little details, they're saying, right, keep that energy. Yeah. People, I heard that's what the kids are saying, right, Jesus?
Mhm.
Keep that energy. If you're gonna be if you're gonna be one way about one thing, be the same way about something else. In that same manner. For example, this is where I get kind of fed up with like LeBron. The sheriff Villanueva actually called out LeBron James and said that he wants LeBron to match donations or forget exactly how he worded it.
Oh, yeah, for the bounty?
For the bounty for the guy who shot these officers.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't personally heard anything from anybody in the NBA or anybody from LeBron, but this is where I get upset, because it's like, hey, if you want to bring light to Breonna Taylor's case, to Jacob Blake's case, to all these other cases, and wear their names on your back.
We should talk about Breonna Taylor on our
and
next podcast.
We should. Been some interesting developments. If you want to do those things, that's cool. That's awesome. Raise awareness, do your thing, but also keep that same energy when it comes to people gunning down sheriff deputies, because what you don't say, if you're going to be this social justice warrior and stand up for civil rights and stand up against police brutality, awesome, great. But you not saying anything about, hey, maybe we shouldn't kill cops, guys, is also just as loud. Mm-hmm. For example, another athlete, one of my favorite athletes, a guy named Marquise Pouncey, plays center for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The NFL debuted, and I think in their first week, all the players on the Steelers got to wear. The team, I guess, agreed on a certain name of a supposed police brutality victim, and they put the name on the back of their helmets. Well, Marquise Pouncey does a lot of work in Pittsburgh and in Florida, where he's from, with the police. And so I guess it was brought to his attention after the game, more facts of the case, like we're saying, this gray area stuff.
Yeah.
And he actually came out and apologized. And he said, I honestly have to admit to you, and this is kind of what we were talking about also earlier, I was unaware of the case. I was just told what to think about it. I was told this name, and I was told we're going to wear it on our helmets. And I wore it. I didn't think about it. He's like, had I known all this information before, I wouldn't have worn that name. So I apologize. He's like, while I do, and he's a black guy. Dude is tatted up, like head to toe, but awesome guy. Like he's the best. I think he's the best. But my point is, he actually came out and apologized, and he does a lot of work with police and against police brutality, and he still apologized because he didn't know all the facts, and he wouldn't have supported this had he known all the facts. Last week, week 2, he wore the name of a fallen officer on the back of his helmet.
Yep.
So, my point is, like, keep that same energy, like, raise awareness, and I think to get into the macro of it, there's a lot going on, and in the little details, and in each case, we can go on and on these details. But one of my heroes, Tim Kennedy, guy's actually from Paso, he was on a podcast, and he was talking. He does a lot of work around the world, fighting for freedom, fighting for democracy, and helping these countries who don't have any of what we have, helping them fight and come out of dictatorships and things like that, and actually get rights and stuff.
Cool.
So he does a lot of things like that. But
I'll have to look into him.
He was saying that you have to understand that there's a whole world out there that wants to see this experiment called America burn. There's a whole world out there of communism, of socialism, of all these things that want to see this experiment of democracy, of capitalism, of freedom, of all these freedoms that we have. They want to see it burn. And that's where the media, it kind of gets twisted in the media, because there's a whole world and things and politics and stuff, but who actually want to see all these things that we experience burn to the ground. And that's a whole other aspect of this, because we're talking about the media, and you're already given this conclusion and how to feel about it before you even read the article.
Yeah.
And I think that has a lot to do about it. And in terms of what we can do to fix it, I think that's a big part is all of us, no matter what our political leanings are, can try as best as we can to actually go to the source instead of reading things just third hand, fourth hand, already processed for us. Because I feel like we would find this middle ground a lot faster if we actually read just straight facts of these stories instead of just listening to what LeBron has to say about it, or what this athlete or this news anchor has to say about it. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like that is on a macro scale, a large part of what's going on is that there's just people adding fuel to the fire and want to see things burn, want to see these protests and turn into riots and lootings and shootings and police getting hunted down, because they just want to see the whole system burn to the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, there's two approaches if something's not working. You either burn it down or you build it up.
Mm.
Right. And to your point about other powers around the world who don't particularly like America and want to see it fail. I mean, that is what America was birthed out of.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
Right.
America is still an experiment, right? The idea of freedom, liberty, and justice for all, right? And there's a lot of people around the world who, unfortunately don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of people around the world who don't want to see that. That's nothing new. I guess I don't want to sound too pessimistic, but that'll probably always be there. The thing is that none of them have the power to end America.
Sure.
Right? We're the only ones who have the power to do that.
That's correct.
That's only going to happen from within. And you're kind of starting to see hints of it where it's literally becoming the norm now. If something happens that upsets a lot of people, I mean, this is becoming normal.
Yeah.
You can expect your city to burn.
Yeah.
I don't just mean for racial things. I mean, even like,
anything.
Now there's certain things happening in politics where people are threatening, if this happens or this gets voted on or this person gets nominated and we're going to burn it down.
There's no trust in the system as a whole. And what I mean is our politics and everything. And that's what's scary for America.
Right. But even just thinking, that's becoming a normal thing.
Right.
Why? It's because division is coming from within, not outside. And why is it like that? I agree. The media is a massive proponent of that. There's profit to be made.
Right.
Off of doing that. I think America, one of our greatest assets, is the opportunity we have, especially towards building wealth. But I think that's also one of our Achilles' heels, is because that gives door for people just to take advantage of people.
Right.
And, you see that especially with the media and with these narratives, this divide and conquer mentality. The truth is it's way more profitable for the media to divide and conquer than it is to unite.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about it. You think people would really be watching the news if there were stories about people uniting all the time and, people working their issues out, and officers, having these town halls where they meet with, citizens of their cities and especially, minorities, and they sit down and work it out.
Yeah.
Like there wouldn't be, the clickbait's gone. What are you going to get?
Right.
There's always profit to be made in division. There's always profit to be made in creating victims on either side of the spectrum. It's a profitable business.
Yeah.
Right? And, that's why we as Americans, we just don't get sucked into that vortex.
Yeah.
We're Americans, right? We're people. The reason why this country exists is because we look out for each other.
Right.
Turn off the TV. Turn off CNN.
Mm-hmm.
Turn off Fox.
Mm-hmm.
Go out and talk to your neighbor.
Right.
If you see these police shootings, right, and obviously we got to talk about it. Obviously we got to figure it out. Obviously, where justice needs to be served, justice needs to be served. But if that upsets you, and you feel like there's no justice, go serve your community. Go do some good.
Yeah.
Right. Don't get caught in the vortex.
Right.
You can't do it.
Right.
And I think we all like each other, and we as Americans, I think we would, if we had just hung out and we spent time together, turned off our TVs, you'd realize that we like each other a lot more than we think.
Yeah.
And I think also leadership. These movements need leadership. Police departments, they have obviously very complicated things to figure out with their police force. They need leadership to help navigate them through it.
Mm-hmm.
The African American community, if they feel, in a lot of these cities that, they're underrepresented or there's no justice, they need leaders to rise up who are going to get them justice.
Mm-hmm.
Because it becomes a snowball effect, right? Oh, we don't get justice, well, we're going to burn it down. Well, that's more black businesses that are destroyed. That's more black lives that are destroyed.
Right.
That's more police coming in.
Mm-hmm.
That means more, force being used, which means more black people getting arrested.
Mm-hmm.
I keep singling out black people, but more people in general. But it's particularly because of the cries of the black community.
Right.
I mean, what good does that do if, you? I mean, I'll put myself. Me as a black man, right? If I'm out there, doing stuff and I get arrested and my son sees that,
right?
That's 1,000 times more detrimental
Wow.
to my people
Sure.
My son seeing me go to jail, right? Talk about mass incarceration as a problem that we face. That's 1,000 times more detrimental.
Right.
Right. Than taking some leadership, figuring out, okay, we're
Yeah.
not getting justice. How do we do this? And so once again, I get it. I don't agree with it. I strongly disagree with everything that's going on, to be honest.
Mhm.
I disagree with the public's response. I disagree. I think it's a tragedy that these men are getting shot.
Yeah.
I get it. Chaotic experiences. I get it.
Yeah.
But I think everybody has to do better.
Right.
And we can all do better. But we can't do better if we keep, getting sucked into that vortex. We
Yeah.
do better by doing good.
Mhm.
Right? Go out and serve.
Yeah.
Go invite your neighbors over.
Sure.
Right.
So I think practically, where I think practically, obviously, like you said, the police system. I don't even pretend to claim that I understand how it works, the ins and outs. Is a lot more complicated than I think, and I think a lot of people need to admit that.
Yeah.
But I do think the police system, they need more training. You
Yeah.
know,
Absolutely.
That's easy to say for us, but I mean, you have talked about the Jocko approach. Jocko Willink has talked about how one whole day of their week needs to be dedicated to training.
Yep.
There needs to be more strict requirements to join, longer training period, how to deal with these situations. How do you deal with going from somebody wielding a knife at you 1 hour, and then a few hours later you're consoling a crying mother because her baby just choked to death or something crazy.
Yeah.
There's a lot more than just what people are led to believe, and I definitely think that defunding the police is a
Yeah.
bigger problem than we want to have.
Here's an unpopular opinion as a man of color. I think the best solution, especially in a lot of these, more troubled neighborhoods,
Mhm.
is actually more police funding,
Mhm.
specifically for more training.
Right.
Just think about it, military, right? I mean, our military is pretty good
Yeah.
at what they do. Right? You don't read about a lot of civilian casualties,
Mhm.
right? We tend to be pretty precise. We tend
Yeah.
to be very well organized, and we have a
Yeah.
good reputation for that.
Yeah.
I'd say about 20 to 30% of their job is actually training.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they spend so much time training, and as a result, they're able to.
Pays off. Yeah.
It pays off, right?
Yeah.
You see it. Think about officers. I think it's like 2 or 3 days a
Mhm.
year. I
Mhm.
heard. I probably need to go back and double check that statistic, but
It's not very many.
even double that, right? Say 1 or 2 weeks a year
Right.
of training. I mean, imagine every day, these officers having to go into the traumatic experiences that they do.
Yeah.
Right, like you said, knife fights, parents with kids dying, violence. I mean,
Mhm.
just the traumatic things that these officers face every day. Right, day in, day
Right.
out. I mean, even just for mental health reasons.
Yeah.
Right, they have to go all this time, and they only spend like a week training for this.
Yeah.
A week to decompress.
Right.
And it's not even like a consistent week. I think it's spread throughout. Right. I think if we want them to be able to be in a position to do their job better, I think they need more training.
Yeah.
And I think it's a mistake to
Right.
pull that funding. Once again, I get, as a man of color, I get that's a very unpopular opinion, but
Yeah.
I think it's going to be way worse
Right.
for our people
Mhm.
if we defund the police. I mean, look at the neighborhoods where the police have abandoned already.
Mhm.
See murders go up, see rapes go up. I get the emotion behind it, but from a leadership perspective, I think that's a bad move.
And I think, geez, who was it? That celebrity that was, I forget who it was, and I probably shouldn't mention her name, but she was, campaigning defund the police, and all that. And then there was somebody flying there was a kid playing with a toy gun outside or something, and she called the cops on the kid and was scared for her life, and the whole gang of cops came, and it was just like this little boy with a toy gun, an airsoft gun or something. Yeah, see, Jesus just pulled up an article. The average U.S. police department requires fewer hours of training than what it takes to become a barber or a plumber.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. And don't get me wrong. Hey, I know a ton of great police officers and sheriff deputies. One of my best friends just joined the police force this year. I know a ton of guys and ladies that are awesome people. At the same time, there are a bunch of people who join the police force just for the power trip, just for the authority that comes with it. But that's not a police thing. That's a people thing, because how many people do we work with that become in management or supervisors just for the role, just to boss people around?
Yeah.
And I think that on the front end, more strict requirements and things like that. And on the back end, more training, but also harsher consequences and more, details, looking into complaints and things like that, and interactions. And there's a lot to it that we don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as a person-to-person, thing, like you said, just being a better person. Like when I'm on my runs, if a sheriff drives past me, I'll throw up my hand at them, and whether they see it or not, just wave to them. And when I'm out in public, whether it's a black guy, a Mexican guy, a white guy, whatever color person next to me, I'm just always trying to be a nice guy. Always trying to, especially because there is a stigma painted against Caucasian-looking people that are white people racist and things like that. Mm-hmm. I don't want to fall into that category. I want people to know, hey, I'm not racist. I like everybody. I'm like a whole mixed breed here. But I know it's probably kind of an ignorant thing to say. But my point is just being a better person.
Yep.
To the person next to you, the person in line in front of you. And I think there's a lot to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess just to summarize, it's like you said, I'll kind of give my summary. I think I get all the controversy that's around the police department. Mm-hmm. I appreciate the police. I admire them. And whatever, mm-hmm. If that upsets you, that's a reflection of your heart, not mine.
Right.
But the truth is there is evil that exists. Mm. Right. You go in these neighborhoods, there are people that want to do bad things. There are people that will harm. Right. Evil is a real thing, and you need someone to deal with it.
Yeah.
Right. And you need someone with authority, mm-hmm. And who carries a certain amount of potential to use force in order to confront that evil.
Right.
You can't Care Bear stare someone out of murdering, right? You can't. It just doesn't work. That's not how the world works.
Please don't do it.
It's in the Bible. The Bible is very clear. There is evil in the world, and God has established mm-hmm. governments to deal with that evil.
Yeah.
And so what do we do about that? As a nation, do we get sucked in the vortex? Well, forget the police, forget them, or do we get sucked into no, everyone's a thug? No, I'll tell you what you should do whenever any of these things happen. Instead of jumping on a side, just say, what can I do to help?
Yeah.
How can I help the situation?
Mm-hmm.
If there's nothing I can directly do to help the situation, all right, what can I do to help the situation from happening in my realm?
Right.
Whether it's in my community, in my city, in my state. What can I personally do?
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you what goes a long way, serving. Right? Go serve people. Right? If we fix our culture, right, it's not the police's job to fix our culture. Mm-hmm. It's their job to confront the evil in the culture when it gets out of hand.
Yeah.
If we fix the culture, all right, that police force becomes a lot less necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, once again, I think it's a culture problem. We got to fix the culture. Number one, we got to take accountability for our actions. Everyone. White, black, police, civilian.
Mm-hmm.
We all have to take accountability for our actions, and we all have to hold each other accountable.
Yeah.
Right? The Bible says that God's throne is built on justice and righteousness.
Mm.
Right? It's a two-way street. And do good.
Right.
Do something good. Go serve at church. Go serve your community. Go invite your neighbors over for dinner. Mm-hmm. Right? Or if you see something, I don't know, be part of the solution.
Right.
Do something.
Right.
But, getting sucked in the vortex doesn't help. You thinking less of people because of a political belief or a political ideology, or something that you really know nothing about, it doesn't help.
Right.
Do something good.
Mm-hmm.
Right. How can I help? Go do it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I like that. I definitely like that. Go do something. Don't just add to the plethora of useless Instagram comments and posts.
Yes. I'd avoid social media.
Let's change our culture.
Yeah.
So hey, as we end, let's get into some good news.
Yeah. Some good news. I like good news.
Good news. The Good News Network is where we're getting a couple of these articles, or just this article today. Good news. 2/3 of Americans believe that they have become a better person this year. How I read
Nice.
that in my head was, good news. 2/3 of Americans have realized that they have repeatedly sucked.
Self-improvement, I guess. That's cool. That's cool to hear. I mean, you wouldn't think that from the news.
Yeah, so
Or from social media.
A poll of 2,000 Americans over the age of 21, and I'm quoting from this article, looked at the positive changes to come from this challenging time. So I guess a lot of people really took the quarantine seriously and got alone and were forced to be alone and look at themselves and make some changes.
Yeah, I think like the first week we talked about detoxing. It's a forced detox.
Yeah.
And I think you're starting to see the positive outcomes.
And I think even watching myself watching some sports and listening to the ratings, after which the ratings are epically low. I think a lot of political stuff is going on, but also I think that a lot of people have just detoxed and learned how to deal without sports or sports betting or things like that cause people to be super into sports. And ratings are super duper low, and I think that's one. I would argue that's one reason why. A couple numbers here. Spending quality time. This is a list of things people no longer take for granted. Spending quality time, 52.28%. 41% say hugs.
Hugs.
Another 32, traveling to new destinations. 31, relaxing walk in the park. Goes on. One of the things at the bottom of this list says, watching my kids' sporting events. People don't take that for granted anymore.
Hitting the gym. That's on the list.
Hitting the gym. Man, I miss the gym.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's good. I think we accurately predicted this when we first kind of started talking about. Hopefully, this is what people get out of it. Hopefully, people appreciate life more, and I think that's good to hear. It's very good news.
People are being forced, to sit down and spend time with each other. Turns out we get along better than we think we do.
Come on.
Life's a lot better than we're told it is. So, cool. Well, Kenny, it's been fun. Let's do this again.
Let's do it.
Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you catch us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Amazon is a podcast platform now. We're on that as well.
We're on it.
And, just make sure you tune in. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit like if you're on YouTube. Make sure you leave a comment. Go ahead and, if you have any questions, hit us up on our Instagram, Monuments Movements. Email us, monumentsmovements@gmail.com. Email us your questions. We'd love to answer them. And until next time, have a great day.
Peace.